We're joined by Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered in studio. We're going to talk all things SEC football. And hey, if you guys want to ask a question to Chris Phillips and get his SEC opinion, call in at 615-737-1045. And I guess let's start out with this. University of Georgia, Tennessee, awesome game. And even in a loss, I feel like you are looking at two college football playoff teams, right? I mean, it kind of feels like Tennessee answered the bell.
Yeah, at least Georgia, I would say, is a lock at this point. I feel pretty confident in saying that. They got the big one against Bama coming up next weekend there in Athens. But I think Tennessee, certainly college football playoff hopeful, man. I thought coming into the season, obviously the schedule really conducive to a big year. My big question for Tennessee was just, is Joey Aguilar him? And being there in person, getting to watch it, I mean, he answered the bell. He's a guy that, again, you're going to have to live and die with him a little bit with some of the shots he takes down the field. I think Chris Brazzell made him look really good on some of those deep shots. And so there's going to be moments, I think, certain games where you're going to see the turnovers maybe mount up a little bit. But, I mean, for him to go out there, do what he did against a Kirby Smart defense, yeah, I think you feel better if you can get past the initial heartbreak of the game, because that game was really, really fun from the Tennessee perspective for about 95% of it. And then the last 5%, obviously, the dogs prevail, and it's just DNA traits, Kirby Smart being Kirby Smart. It's why I picked Georgia going in that game. Felt really good about them, that they just would find a way. And I think they proved a lot, too, with Gunnar Stockton at the quarterback position for them. But, yeah, I think you got to be really hopeful if you're a Tennessee fan. The good news is this. You have UAB this week. I think that is such an undervalued storyline for this week, is you're not having to go straight into the Mississippi State game or go back into a conference game. You can kind of, get over that Georgia loss, get back out there, execute, run it up on somebody, beat up on somebody, feel good about yourself again, because that heartbreak lingers a little bit. We all heard about the hangover that happens from a game like that. So, yeah, I think you got to be optimistic as a Tennessee fan, especially, too, when you're going to get healthy on defense. You're going to get healthy on defense. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about. And again, I think the schedule works really well for you. I hate to overemphasize that, but not all these schedules are built equally. So, yeah, I think if you're a Tennessee fan, certainly I think 10-2 is in play. Obviously, that tightrope got a little bit narrower with the loss you pick up to Georgia, a game you felt like you probably maybe should have had. And for Georgia, yeah, I mean, it's the dogs are inevitable, it feels like, under Kirby. Again, they got that big one against Bama, but no matter how that one goes, I feel pretty confident the dogs will be in the playoff.
I mean, with Gunnar Stockton, were you surprised by the offensive philosophy they showed with Gunnar Stockton coming right out of the gate? Because it felt like they kind of didn't utilize him. And I know that we've kind of talked on our show that maybe they weren't just wanting to show anything.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I thought they kind of took the training wheels off a little bit. Bobo's a guy, he loves the screen game. I get why Georgia fans get frustrated, because even I'm in the stadium, they ran another screen, but it works. It was working in that game. But I was so impressed with Gunnar Stockton. What really stood out was, we know about his abilities. He can run the football. He's a really good runner. I think the passing was the question, if you will. He made some nice throws down the field. But again, what impressed me most was there were so many third downs in that game where he stared down the barrel of the entire stadium weighing on him, the gravity of the situation, and just delivered a strike more often than not. And that throw he had in the corner of the end zone to London Humphreys, because of the situation, because of what was on the line, I mean, that was the game, right? I mean, that might be the best throw that I've ever seen, at least in person.
Wow.
I mean, it was just, again, for the gravity of the situation, he delivers an absolute dime over the shoulder, and it was a great catch as well. Great throw and catch. Yes, I mean, to make that play in that situation, again, if you're a Dogs fan, you're walking away feeling the exact same way Tennessee fans are, except you got the W. We've got our guy in Gunnar Stockton. That was the big question. There were so many questions around it. Now you go into this bye week feeling really good. You're able to clean some things up. I know Kirby, there's going to be a lot to clean up for them defensively. I think that's probably your concern going into the Bama game because of what Ty Simpson and those weapons on the outside, what they can do. But, yeah, I think you got your quarterback. I mean, it doesn't mean he's not going to still have some growing pains, and there's going to be some moments of adversity, if you will, but I thought Gunnar showed me a lot, just if nothing else from the poise perspective. We got to remember that was his first big-time road start of any kind, right? He had the SEC championship, he had the bowl game against Notre Dame, and then he had two cupcake games essentially to start the season against Marshall and Austin Peay. So, I mean, that was his first real big test on the road in the SEC, and he answered the bell.
When it comes down to, if I would have told you last week, because you said that Florida was going to play LSU pretty close. You were all over that. But if I were to tell you last week that DJ Lagway was going to throw 5 interceptions, but you have to predict the score. Wouldn't you have predicted it would have been more by 10 points? And how do you feel Brian Kelly handled being asked about his offense after the game?
I certainly wouldn't have bet Florida plus 8.5. I actually, that number went down, and I still took the Gators, and I regret that, obviously, because they lost by double digits. But no, I mean, I would have thought LSU would have ran all over them. And I think it speaks to, the issues they're having, which you ask about the Brian Kelly response, it's because of the struggles offensively. I mean, we find out this week Garrett Nussmeier has the torso injury. How much is that affecting him and his ability? Well, I mean, if you're hurt, listen, everybody, as you go throughout the season, nobody's 100%. Everybody's dealing with something, but maybe it explains some of his inconsistent play. I think, honestly, Zach, this is just more Garrett Nussmeier being Garrett Nussmeier. This is kind of what he's done his entire career, and how funny, how quickly things changed. 2 years ago, we're talking about Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman, and it's a historically bad defense, and now it's the defense carrying LSU. Looks like it's the best defense for them since the early 2010s at all 3 levels, and now we got an offense that can't do much of anything right, which doesn't make a lot of sense because they've got all kinds of talent all over the roster. But, yeah, things are rough right now in Gainesville. DJ Lagway with the 5 interceptions. You give LSU credit. I was very intrigued that Game Day decided that was the best possible destination for them, going down to Coral Gables, going to that game at Miami Gardens, Florida-Miami, which that spread is really interesting, too, at 7.5. But, yeah, the Brian Kelly thing, I thought it was a bad look. I did. I thought it was a bad look for BK. I mean, listen, it's not the media's job. And we're independent media at SEC Unfiltered. We are, fly the pirate flag. We are completely, not even remotely close to traditional media. But I respect the heck out of traditional media and their role and everything. And I'm not one of these people that thinks it's got to be independent media and traditional media kind of going head to head and clashing, if you will. Like, we can respect each other. And so I respect the heck out of what journalists do, reporters. And so it's not that guy's job to, when you come into the postgame presser, pump you up and make you feel great about the game. He just asked him a question, and I get Brian Kelly's frustrated. He's irritated, but he's irritated because the guy has a point. They can't run the football. They're porous offensively, right? And that's an issue. I mean, you won the game. You're 3-0. That's great, which, I mean, what is Clemson? That's a whole other conversation. What is Florida? They lost to South Florida. That's another conversation. We're still at that point in the season, I think, early, where we're trying to figure out what everybody is. But take nothing away. You're sitting at 3-0, but I mean, you couldn't move the ball against Louisiana Tech. So, there's obviously a problem there. The reporter asked him a question. I think if you're Brian Kelly, you got to handle it better. I thought he was, and he came out and apologized 2 days later. So if anybody thinks he's not in the wrong, why did he come out and apologize if he felt like he was, wasn't in the wrong? So it's the season. Emotions are running high. I'm not saying BK should be fired or anything. I'm just saying that I thought that was a moment of he could have handled that a lot better. But the bigger issue, again, why can't LSU move the football with more consistency? They got Southeastern Louisiana this weekend. If they can't go out there and score 40 or 50 this weekend, I don't know if they ever will.
We're going around the SEC with Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered.
Well, great stuff there, Chris. I guess I want to go back to your preseason. I don't know what they were. What were your preseason predictions for the SEC to win it, or who would make the playoffs? Because now that may be changing. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, it's absolutely changing. I had Alabama, Texas in the SEC title, and I had Alabama beating Texas to win the SEC championship, and I actually had Texas winning the national title. So unless Arch Manning finds something, we're I don't know. It might be more likely they're coming to the Music City Bowl. I think there's an SEC team that plays in that. No, so I mean that was my SEC championship prediction. And my playoff prediction. Again, I knew coming in, I felt very uncomfortable about it because it felt so simple and so easy, and we know it never works out that way.
No, never.
I'm always challenging myself, think outside the box, because I'm like, it's not going to work out how you think it's going to. There's going to be upsets. There's going to be teams that underachieve. There's going to be teams that overachieve. So I had your typical 4. I had LSU, Georgia, Texas, Alabama making the playoff. Feel really good about Georgia. I still feel good about LSU. I think they're going to get it going offensively. They just have too much talent to be as bad as they've been. I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball, but something's got to give. I think they're going to get it going offensively. So Georgia, LSU, I feel good about. I'm still not selling all the stock on Alabama. I think there's a good chance, and we'll talk more about it next week. Ty Simpson and company go in there, and I think they could beat Georgia. I know it's a night game between the hedges, but you can't understate that mental. We always talk about Kirby Smart has Josh Heupel's number, and now he's got Steve Sarkisian's number. Well, Alabama's got Georgia's number, period. Kirby Smart's anybody. So I think that's going to be an interesting game. So I'm not selling all the stock on Bama. Texas, I don't know. The team that I would throw in there now is Oklahoma. I feel really good about Oklahoma. I think it was you and I, we talked about this last week. I think Oklahoma could make the SEC championship. They've got a big game this weekend against Auburn. Jackson Arnold coming in. I don't see any way Jackson Arnold walks in there and beats them. I think they'll be ready for that one. Oklahoma minus 6.5 is one of my best bets of the week. So I think Oklahoma has emerged as the playoff team for sure, and maybe an SEC title contender. Beyond that, I think it's probably those 5 fighting for 4 spots for the playoff. Outside of that, I think you look at Tennessee.
That's
I think Tennessee has
Tennessee goes 10-2. Let's say they
Tennessee's 110. If you go 10-2 in the SEC, you're in.
Because who do have to beat Alabama as well as Florida?
Yeah.
The toughest 2 teams.
Yeah, well, and again, is Billy Napier even the head coach? Because that game's so late in the season now, second to last week. The thing you got to overcome there, obviously, going to the Swamp. You haven't won there, I think, since 2003.
Yeah, Oklahoma and Vandy, too. Oh. So, Vandy's no slouch. We haven't even talked about Vandy.
It's interesting, because the schedule looks, week to week, it looks more difficult or less difficult based off how teams are playing, right? That's the tough thing. So I'll tell you this, too, that the game that we're going to this weekend, Missouri, South Carolina, I think Mizzou's a player. And a lot of it, too. Number one, Mizzou offensively has been electric. Bo Pribula, Ahmad Hardy might be the best running back in the conference. But, you look at them, the schedule's conducive, really conducive to a big year for them, too. It shakes out really, really well. They miss some of the top teams in the conference. And again, they've got a really good team. They don't leave Como till October 18th.
Right.
They've just, the way that schedule worked out for them. By the way, another one I didn't mention, Texas A&M. They made a statement on Saturday beating Notre Dame. They got things to shore up defensively, but I trust Mike Elko to do it. But the way Marcel Reed is playing, he's taking that next step. That
he's from here, Nashville.
That wide receiver room is absolutely electric. Might be the best in the conference, and they've got a 1-2 punch at running back with Moss and Foster. That's incredible. So, there's a lot of teams right now that obviously still have a lot of hope. I'm not willing to sell all of my preseason predictions and expectations. Even Texas. You just feel like at some point it's like, is Arch Manning going to really be this bad all season? Is the offense going to be this bad, or do they get it going? So there's a lot unresolved right now that we got to figure out over the next couple of months.
I know it's way too early, but I know a lot of people are talking about quarterbacks and who's playing well and some of the transfer guys, but who is the MVP right now?
It's got to be John Mateer.
Right.
It's got to be.
Does that put Oklahoma into it?
Well, when you got a quarterback,
kind of level?
When you got a quarterback, you got a chance. When you got a guy like that, I got to see him in person a couple weeks ago at the Oklahoma-Michigan game in Norman. Great atmosphere, had a great time. But he's awesome, man. He's just a playmaker. He's a guy that goes out there. And I think the big thing for him, kind of similar to Joey Aguilar, they're sort of similar in this way, is that take care of the football, make smart decisions, play within yourself, like be who you are. It's going to be a little erratic at times, but, be who you are, make big plays, take risks, take chances, but can you also balance that out with being smart, getting the football to your playmakers, not putting your team in a bad spot because of a turnover or just a mistake or a blunder or whatever. So, but John Mateer's been electric, just under, I think, 1,000 passing yards already on the season. But hey, right behind him is Joey Aguilar. So, Joey Aguilar is right there too. And I think the style of play is really conducive for both of them. They're going to have big seasons, I think. And that was my big question for Tennessee, was just the quarterback. Because I think once defense once you get healthy on the outside, I think the defense still should be a strength. I think you just got to give Georgia credit in that game, the way they played offensively. So I think defense will be a strength. And I think if you got the quarterback, you've got weapons. Brazel showed himself as a wide receiver 1. I think Mike Matthews is a really talented player. It's going to continue to come on. I love Kitzelman at tight end. I think the running back room is deep, and it's a little bit better than people realize, and the offensive line's been solid. So, but I got to go John Mateer right now. But there's a lot of guys that we weren't necessarily expecting to be the top guys that we're talking about. Again, Joey Aguilar was a complete unknown coming in. Mateer, too. We saw him do it at Washington State, but the question was, can he do it at the Power 4 level? Now it's, can he do it at the SEC level? Because this is his first SEC contest. So, again, it's another one of those games. So much of the narrative can change, because if Auburn goes in there and beats Oklahoma and Jackson Arnold plays well, all of a sudden we're talking about the Auburn Tigers as being right there at the forefront of being a playoff contender. They'll be sitting undefeated. Jackson Arnold, I think we could be having a different conversation about him. It changes on a week-to-week basis, man. That's why we love it. It's a lot of fun.
I guess lastly for me, though, is what's kind of, let's say, been your boldest or biggest surprise team? Maybe not competing for the playoffs. We all sitting here thinking about Vanderbilt, but there's some other SEC teams, Mississippi State, that are doing. Which team is more surprising to you that they're playing as well as they are?
I think Vandy is a good option for that. And I thought Vandy was going to be solid this year. I did. I mean, I had them going back to a bowl game, but I think the way they've been doing it, the way it has looked, right, just beating up on people. Like, they're not getting by, and it's little old Vandy pulling the upset. I mean, they go into Blacksburg, and I know it's a Virginia Tech team that just fired their head coach, and they're in disarray. But Vandy sent them into disarray because of what they did in that second half, right? I mean, the South Carolina game, I know Lenora Sellers goes out, but I mean, the way they just took it to them for 4 quarters, and I mean, it's so much more beyond Diego Pavia. I think that's just been so impressive. I give Clark Lee all the credit in the world. The defense he's built, the pieces he's put around Diego Pavia, it's so much more than just the quarterback. And obviously, when you got a guy like Pavia, maybe the best leader in the entire conference. I mean, he's that type of dude. So, yeah, Vandy's fun to watch, and I think it's not your little old Vandy sneaking up on you anymore. They're a real contender. I think so.
That's what makes it even more surprising. Everybody knows they are for real, and they're not sneaking up on people.
And that's pretty crazy, right? But I have to say, Mississippi State, though, they took down Arizona State. They're putting up a lot of points, and that's something they couldn't do last year, even against the bad teams. They look like a totally different team that has bought into something. Is this all just Jeff Lebby magic at this point?
I thought they would be much improved. We got to see what Arizona State is, I think, as well. I mean, that was a huge win, obviously. Yeah. The big question for me was defensively, and it looks like they've taken massive strides. I think offensively with Jeff Lebby, you never question it, right? Like, you never question his offensive prowess, and I think one of the best offensive minds in the game. Blake Shapen was a guy coming in we talked about that I felt really good about, a dude that won the Big 12 Player of the Year, Big 12 MVP, if you will, a couple years ago, and obviously gets hurt last year, cuts his season short. You know, he's a guy. Then you look at what they have around him. I mean, Fluff Bothwell and Devon Booth at the running back positions. They've added some guys at the wide receiver position that have really stepped up, that have been really, really good. Yeah, they're an exciting team, man. They really are. I think they've got a good chance. Obviously, this weekend they play Northern Illinois. They're one of my best bets. Again, I think they cover. I think they're going to keep the good times rolling and start Vegas. And that's a tricky road trip for Tennessee the following weekend. It really, really is. So I think this is a team, listen, we all said, I had Mississippi State fans tell me before the season, if you can just get to 5 wins, it's a success. They're going to get to 4 this weekend. Now, the SEC schedule is going to kick in. It's going to hit another gear, but I don't see any reason why they can't win at least 2 SEC games. I think getting to a bowl game is very realistic for this group.
Is this going to be a kind of year where the SEC really probably does get in a 9-3 team? Because it seems like, I mean, every time you talk about a different SEC team, you're like, well, if they win this week, they could be in the playoffs.
I think it's a much stronger possibility than what we saw a season ago. And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, because of how it shook out last year, because of some of the teams that got in with the SMUs and the Indianas and the way the whole Clemson thing happened with them kind of backing their way into the college football playoff. Yeah, I think the SEC is going to get a little bit more benefit of the doubt. I mean, they had 3 teams last year, all in South Carolina, Alabama, and Ole Miss that, you know, I think all had a case. You know, you could argue all were deserving, if you will, in their own right. So I can't say 110% is it going to happen, but I definitely think it's more likely. Like, and if it's the right team, that's the key. Like, if Oklahoma ends up going 9-3, we all agreed in the preseason their schedule was maybe the most difficult in the conference. I think it actually was labeled the most difficult in the conference. If they go 9-3 and it's the right 3 losses, you're going to have a hard time convincing me they're not deserving of a spot in the college football playoff. So I think it depends. Like, if Mizzou goes 9-3, I don't think they have much of a case. I think, honestly, if Tennessee were to go 9-3, I don't know that you've got as much of a case with some of the others just because of the schedule. But then again, the difficulty of the schedule is going to evolve and change because of teams get better, teams get worse, whatever. So maybe Tennessee would have a case, maybe Missouri, et cetera. So, but if it's the right team, I think with the right resume, I do think it's more likely to happen this year because of we saw this play out last year. It was almost like we're kind of, hey, let's give them the benefit of the doubt because we didn't factor in strength of schedule. It was just all about how many wins do you have, and that's what frustrated folks, you know, like us, like so many coaches and people in these buildings that, you know, it doesn't benefit us to play a hard schedule. It doesn't benefit us to schedule difficult out of conference. Like, it's all about just Indiana went 11-1 and played nobody. And the one team they played, they got boat raced by, and then they got to the playoff and they got boat raced again. So I think it's one of the reasons you saw the new protocols moving forward. and why the SEC was wanting to go to the 9-game conference schedule. They're now there's some sort of new procedure where they're taking into account strength of schedule. We'll see how that plays out in the future. But I think that school of thinking is going to start more so this year, where I do think the SEC gets more the benefit of the doubt. Who that team's going to be, is it a 4th SEC team or a 5th SEC team? We'll see. It just kind of depends on how much this league beats up on each other.
Well, there you go. Chris Phillips over at SEC Unfiltered. Give everybody the lowdown of SEC Unfiltered.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. It's really cool to come in studio, by the way. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity. Yeah, we're at SEC Unfiltered, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your content, YouTube, podcast, our website, secunfiltered.com. We're on the SEC Unfiltered tour right now, traveling for the next 12-plus weekends. This weekend we'll be in Columbia, Missouri for the Missouri-South Carolina game. We've already had great experience at this point. We had Rocky Top last weekend, went to Norman, went to Columbus, Ohio. Again, only going to continue. They get better and better. And, yeah, we're talking all things football, baseball, basketball, continuing to grow. We're scaling out. We just announced yesterday we're going to be adding shows to the network, team affiliates. So it's really just the beginning for us, man. So
there you go. Nashville's own Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered. When we come back, we'll talk more about the Tennessee Titans as covered too with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.